Hey guys, today we're talking about coaching defensive principles at the youngest age groups. So let's go. So for those of you who've been following my channel and seen many of my videos, you know that my focus predominantly is on possession. Most of my videos are on building on the back, combining, how do you get your team in the right shape, things like that. But I've had a lot of people reach out to me and ask, how do I teach defending? Because it's important. And there are many concepts that do need to be introduced at the youngest age levels. So let's start with 1v1 defending. Most of you know that I like to start my sessions with the younger age groups with 15 minutes of 2v2 or 3v2 or even 1v1 when they start getting there. And it's really a free-flowing type of kind of pickup game with small goals. During this time, you can start to introduce some of the 1v1 principles. So here we're focusing on one of the 2v2 games that has just started at the beginning of practice. And you can see that I put the coaching icon right there, which is a place I do normally stand. And while I'm not actively coaching, I do say some things as the games are going on. So defensive principles, especially 1v1. First thing we're going to discuss is the approach. So how will this blue defender approach this red player with the ball? There is a saying that we use. It's called fast, slow, side, low. So they've got to quickly close this distance, but they don't want to stay that speed the whole way. So as they get closer to the ball carrier, they have to slow down. So fast to close the distance, slow when you get there, side. So they need to be side on. And that means that their side of their body, their shoulder is facing the defender. And lastly, low. They want to be low so they can quickly move their feet.
This is a really good example here of a defender who is side on. Defender in white is keeping her hips perpendicular to the attacking player, which will allow her to recover if indeed the attacking player gets behind.
Okay, so fast, slow, side, low. The other consideration in our approach is the angle that we are going to take towards the ball carrier. So what the blue defender wants to do here is take an angle that pushes them towards the sideline. We want to cut the space as much as possible. What we don't want to do is take an angle here where now there's all this space on the other side of the field that we're encouraging the attacker to go to. You want to try and tell your defenders to take an angle that takes them closest to the sideline. A way that I like to reinforce this is by asking the kids a misleading question. I'll say, who's the best defender in the history of soccer? Never going to be beat. And they throw out all sorts of defenders' names of their favorite teams. But the answer is the sideline. The sideline is the best defender in the history of soccer. Will never get beat. It's always when you're defending your friend.
The last coaching point to be made on 1v1 defending is another saying, jab, don't stab. Stabbing is when you take your back foot and lunge at the ball. Jabbing is when you take your front foot to go to the ball. Here's a good example of a defender stabbing at the ball. Yellow number 7 takes his back foot, completely lunges towards the ball to win a tackle. He misses, and the right attacker gets by him into a dangerous area. Here's an example of a jab. You can see that the defender, despite not being in a very good side-on position, does get their hips eventually perpendicular and jabs at the ball with their front foot. You have to teach the triggers for when a defender would jab, and there are 3 main ones that I teach. The first is if the opponent with the ball takes a poor touch. The second is if the opponent's eyes are down, looking at the ground or the ball. And the third is if you're in a tight space. Those are 3 excellent opportunities to jab at the ball to try to win it back. Here is a specific example of an exercise that can focus on defending. This can be played on the exact same field that the players were just playing their warm-up small-sided game activation. The setup is here as shown with 2 teams. Here it's a red team and a blue team. The balls are played in from the coach. The coach takes turns playing balls into each team. Whoever receives the ball, the player directly diagonally opposite from them comes in, and it's a 1v1 situation. If the attackers score a goal, it's 1 point. If the defenders steal the ball and score, it's 2 points. The coach counts out an 8-second clock, so the attackers have 8 seconds to score. You play games to 5 points or 3 or 4 minutes. This exercise gives multiple opportunities for coaching points on 1v1 defending.
Okay guys, so we're back looking again at our small-sided game to start the practice. And we're looking at it through the lens of defending 2 versus 2. This is starting to get your young players' minds around the fact that they're defending as a unit, as a team. The biggest thing to start is who pressures, who covers, okay? The person closest to the ball is always the pressure. So that person is the one who pressures. What you'll see in the youngest age groups is everybody pressures. If you can start just very simply with a 2v2 game like this, and I'll be, again, as coach, I'll be kind of standing there. I don't stop anything. I'll say, who's pressure, who's pressure? Who's cover, who's cover? Once they start to get that, they understand that once the ball gets circulated over here, this person does not go to the ball, okay? This is your man, you're covering this person. The pressure now changes, and the person who was covering comes and pressures. Now we get into the idea of what are we pressuring and what are we covering. So the pressuring, usually the youngest age group kids, they can get that, okay? Person's got the ball, I'm closest to the ball, I go pressure the ball, I go try to win them. And sometimes it's not winning the ball, it's just keeping the player in front, keeping pressure. They got to be very careful not to stab here. Again, this is getting into your 1v1 stuff, because if this guy gets around, then we're in a lot of trouble. But in the setting of 2v2, the pressure is usually pretty easy. What they don't usually understand right away, and some can actually take a while to get used to, is what we're actually covering. So if this is the scenario and the pressure is here, a lot of times you will see players who are off the ball defending come up here. And I always tell them, where's the dangerous space? And the dangerous space is behind them. We cannot let this defender get over here, because then you have a goal. So you are covering the person, but you're also covering space. So what I usually tell them is try to be somewhere in between the player and the dangerous space. So if the dangerous space is back here and the player's here, about halfway is here. Again, as the ball changes sides and comes over, you can again see that the pressure is now to the person closest to the ball, and this person actually has to retreat back to cover this dangerous space, or at least get in the area in between the player and the dangerous space.
So here is the exact game we were just playing, doing it 1v1, and the next progression to that is to go to a 2v2. The game is played the same. You distribute the ball as coach to either side, but now both of the teammates come out in a 2v2. You continue to give them 8 seconds for the attacking team to score. If the attacking team scores, it's 1 point. If the defending team wins the ball and scores, it's 2 points. Play to a certain score, like 5, or till 4 or 5 minutes have gone by. Your coaching points and interventions here are just what we talked about, centered around the ideas of pressure and cover.
One thing I do a lot in my sessions is play 4-goal games. And the most basic one of those is a 3v3 4-goal game, which now introduces not only pressure and cover, but also balance. You can see that we've combined the small-sided games into the 4-goal game. And if I had 12 players, I'd have another game going on the other side. But just to focus your attention, I'm staying with this one 3v3 game. You can see you have a team in the red here, and they are attempting to score on these 2 goals. You have a team that's blue here that are scoring on these 2 goals. So defensively, we've already talked about the idea of pressure and cover. This introduces balance. So what do I mean by that? So as the ball starts to be moved by the red team, we've already discussed, okay, the person closest to the ball is the pressure, and that's this guy. So he comes and pressures. We've also talked about the person next to the ball or off the ball covering the dangerous area, which we know the dangerous area is behind because the goals are behind. We don't want to get scored on. What about the defender that's even further off the ball? So what they want to do is balance the line. So what we want to have here is him cinching in to help cover this space. We're not worried about this guy over here because for whatever reason, let's say this attacker gets by this guy we know that this person's going to have to come over, and then that's going to leave this guy open, and this guy's going to have to come over. So it sort of balances out the space that we have to cover. To finish up, guys, I want to talk about two concepts that are associated with defending as a whole team: pressing and counterpressing. So these are the starting positions for our press. Our striker, our number 9, is in the center of the field, right at the build-out line. Our two fullbacks are on their sides of the field, on the build-out line. The center midfielder is just a few yards behind, and the center backs are right about the half line. Once the ball gets played in, the pressure, the person who applies the initial press, has to be the striker. And the angle at which they come to get the ball, come to defend, is again pushing them towards the sideline that we talked about with our 1v1 defending. The fullback on the same side has to stay, and this is key. The more inexperienced, the more unorganized teams, you will see everybody go to the ball, and it will look something like that. In a coordinated press, the fullback on that side has to stay. The center midfielder on this side has to come over right about the build-out line and get ready for this ball here. Now, he may try to come into this space, their center midfielder, and that we're 100% fine with that, but our center midfielder would have to come with him if that were the case. Hopefully, the striker's done a good enough job to cut off this pass that it's not available. But either way, the center midfielder has to account for their center midfielder. The the center back on the side of where the ball has gone has got to watch the 9. A good coordinated team will get a 9 into this beyond space, and that can be an extremely dangerous ball. So if that's the case, the center back has to press him here. The fullback and the center back on the opposite side cinch in to, again, cut this space down, making a press with a younger team look like this. This can be very difficult for teams to deal with because you've cut their space and there's really no options other than going back to the goalkeeper, which again, we don't mind, because if this comes back to the keeper, we again just start putting immediate pressure, and the whole press would have to shift at that point. Fullback on this side comes over, center mid comes here, our center back comes over, our center back on that side comes over, fullback comes over, and again, we just take that and we switch field and change direction of our press. A small point here about counterpressing, guys. Your whole team has to buy into counterpressing. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you lose the ball, you guys have to fight like crazy to win it back. So one example showing us attacking in our attacking half of the field, let's say that the center back plays a ball into our striker here, which is very dangerous. However, the center midfielder comes in and he loses the ball. Now we have to press them in order not to get countered. So the center mid immediately has to come over. And if this is the pressure, it's the same situation. If this is the pressure, this person has to cover. He doesn't have to come through here. It's a similar concept as 2v2 or 3v3 defending. Just know that if you lose the ball, we have to have a team culture that we're going to get it back.
Hey guys, I hope that helped. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And if you like that video, check out that one.